All right, how are we doing? Okay, in this lesson here today, we are going to examine repetition structures. So, we want to be lazy developers. um, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to be good and lazy. And one of the rules, if you will, that uh, kind of reinforces our laziness is if I'm doing something over and over again, if I'm having to write the same piece of code, then there's probably a better way. Um, that's usually how we look at it. So let's talk about this. As we continue on our journey to becoming good developers, maybe even great developers, we want to begin to think about how to write code that is reusable. That is one of the key things to development, writing code that is reusable. You want to be able to write code that is so, what we call elegant and clean, that you can take it and replicate it in other places. Uh, there are some tasks that need to be executed often. Writing code to execute each individual task can be cumbersome and time consuming. Also, there's more room for error. We should look at how to write a single block of code that will complete several tasks. And we can do this with something that we call looping. All right. Looping allows us to repeat a task through a data set. And there's a handful of loops out there in JavaScript. You can click on the link that I have in the slides and look at all the various loops. But in these slides, we're going to focus on these three: the for loop, the while loop, and for each loop. But before we get into these, there's something I wanted to look at real quick here in that I failed to mention. And I did say that I wanted to talk about it, but I haven't yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and start up my HTML5, and uh, I'm gonna name this repetition structure. So I'm gonna put an H1 right here. Repetition structures, and don't forget to add your link, your JavaScript. So JS. There we go. Okay, and let me go live with this baby. Okay, and there's that looking good. Let me move that over here so I can take these slides and put them over there. Cool. And let me just inspect this, go to the console. All right. So, um, what I wanted to look at real quick before we get into repetition structures, we talked about the Boolean operators, right? And we have two equal signs. That means is equal to, and then we have three equal signs, which means is strictly equal to. And I want to talk about that briefly to explain what's happening here. Okay. So we can see. I don't want to leave this unsaid. So I'm going to say console.log 7 is equal to 7. And again, whenever I'm using a Boolean operator in my expression, the expression is going to evaluate to either true or false. Okay. So here I'm saying 7 is equal to 7. And obviously that evaluates to true. That's pretty easy. We can see that 7 is equal to 7. If I said 3 plus 4 is equal to 7, again, that evaluates to true. That makes sense. Okay, cool. Let's say console.log the string 7 is equal to the string 7. And again, that evaluates to true. Cool. We're rolling with this. All right. Let's say I say console.log the number 7 is strictly equal to the number 7. So I'm going to add an extra equal sign right here. So now I have 3 of them as opposed to 2. Again, that evaluates to true. All right, cool. What if I said console.log the number 7 is equal to the string 7? Again, that evaluates to true. The number 7 is equal to the string 7. All right. What if I say console.log the number 7 is strictly equal to the string 7? Here it returns false. And it returns false because is strictly equal to is going to return true if the, I'll say, data and the type are equal. So number 7 is strictly equal to the string 7. That returns false because we are not only comparing 7 and 7, but we're comparing the number, the type number, and the type string. And a string does not equal a number. So this would return false. So let's play around with this some more. What if I said console.log 3 plus 4, does that equal the string 7? That does evaluate to true. Why does that evaluate to true? Because on the left side, when I process this, it becomes 7. And then again, we can see here, the number 7 is equal to the string 7. So this does evaluate to true. If I say console.log 3 plus 4 is equal to the string 3 plus 4, that evaluates to false. Why does that evaluate to false? Because 3 plus 4, that evaluates to 7. The string 3 plus 4 is just the string 3 plus 4. And we're not doing any equating. We're not doing any calculation here. Rather, it's just the string 3 plus 4 because, again, a string is simply text. So that's why this here is returning false, because I'd be saying the number 7 is equal to the string 3 plus 4, and that's false. So I wanted you to see the difference between is equal to and is strictly equal to. And remember, is strictly equal to, meaning you have 3 equal signs. It returns true if the data and the type are equal. Okay. So I just wanted you to look at that. I wanted to talk about that before we go on and move into the loops, because sometimes it can be tricky. Now, when you are applying this, it depends on whatever it is that you're doing, where you determine whether you use is equal to or is strictly equal to. Me personally, if I can help it, if I'm thinking about it, if I'm locked in, I'm always going to use is strictly equal to. That's if I'm locked in, because I want to make sure that the material that I'm working on does come out the way that I want it to. And I like to have that kind of safeguard where I'm checking for the type. But now there's some cases where You know, it doesn't matter whether if it's string or a number. As long as I'm getting the value that I want, that is equal to, will be sufficient. But I just wanted to cover that again real quick before we talk more about these repetition structures. Okay, so there we are. That's that. I feel like I did what I need to do with that. Okay, so let's get into repetition structures. And again, we have three loops that we're going to look at in this lesson. The first one is the for loop. And the for loop, as you can see here, will repeat a task through a data set until a condition is false. And here's the syntax for a for loop. We have the for keyword. We have parentheses, and inside of parentheses, we have these three pieces. One, we have what's called the initialization. Two, we have the condition. And then three, we have the iteration. Then we have our curly braces. And as you know, inside of our curly braces, we do stuff. So I'm going to type that out right here. So we have the for loop, syntax for loop, the for keyword, then parentheses, we have initialization, followed by a semicolon. Then we have a condition, followed by a semicolon. And then we have the iteration, again, followed by a semicolon. And then our curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we do stuff. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. Let's do a loop. Well, let's talk about this first. So with the initialization, what do we mean by that? What it does, it sets a counter. Okay, and you can think of initializing a variable like saying var I gets 0. Okay, so what we're doing, we're setting up a counter with the initialization. In other words, we are initializing this loop, essentially saying, hey, loop, start here. And then we have the condition, and the condition is going to be a Boolean expression. And if the condition is true, the code block will execute. For example, the example we have here, I is less than or equal to 10. And then we have an iteration. And the iteration is the steps to move through the data set. And now we're introducing something that we haven't seen before, this I++. Okay, what in the world does that mean? This is our iterator, as you can see right here. What is this I++? These slides are so good, sometimes I forget. They're like, oh yeah, I did cover this. We talked about this in the slides. Pat myself on the back if you won't pat me. Because if I don't sound the best, tell me who will. Five Dog said it. When we want to simply count by adding 1 to a number, we can use what's called the increment operator. JavaScript also has a decrement operator, which is I minus minus, and that allows us to subtract by 1. Okay, so the increment operator is just a way to simply, again, add 1 to whatever number that we're using. So come over here and look at this real quick. Like say var num gets 7. Okay, and then I could say num plus plus, and then I will console.log num, and you can see there I get 8. And then I can come over here and num plus plus again, log it out. There's 9. So that increment that adds 1 is a simple way to count, just adding 1 to a number. Okay, so cool. Let's get back to this loop. Here's what we're going to do. Let's do this one together. So we're going to say for, and then we're going to say, and I don't know why I did that in my slides. Jeez Louise. For var, I need to fix that. Var I gets 0. Watch that 1. Semicolon. I is less than or equal to 10. I plus plus. Console.log I. So all this is what this is going to do, or what this should do, is it should log out into the console the numbers 1 through 10. That's simply what it should do. And we look here in the console, there you can see there goes the numbers 1 through 10. This is much easier. You see much shorter than me saying, hey, log out 1, log out 2. Uh-oh. Log out 3. Up. So on and so forth. I'm not going all the way to 10 with that, but you can see this takes a little longer, right? And we don't want to do that. So we can simply use a for loop, as we did right here, that is going to console the numbers 1 through 10. I wish I can cover this up. So the variable I is initialized and set to 1. The loop asks if I, which is 1, is less than or equal to 10. And that's true. So then we're going to console.log 1. And then we're going to iterate, which means I increments from 1 to 2. And then the loop asks if I, which is now 2, is less than or equal to 10, which is true. And then we repeat steps 3 and 4 all the way until I is less than or equal to 10 returns false. So in other words, I would be 11. So in other words, I'm saying, hey, make this a comment. I'm saying, hey, I is, well, I'll say, is I less than or equal to 10? As 1, and put that in parentheses, is I, which is 1, less than or equal to 10? That's true. Okay, so then what do? We log 1, which is I. And then we increment. So now I, which was 1, becomes 2. And then we say, is I, now which is 2, less than or equal to 10? Well, that's true. Then we log out 2. Okay. And we do that for a long time. And then we get to, we say, hey, is I 10 less than or equal to 10? That's true. So then we log 10. And then 10 again becomes 11. So let me add that right there. Increment 2. That becomes 3. So we increment, and then 10 becomes 11. And I say, is I, which is now 11, less than or equal to 10. And that's false. And when it's false, that's when it stops working. And that is how this for loop works. So you can see here, we use it to iterate through a data set. And you need to have these three ingredients right here: the initialization, the condition, and the iteration. So we can do it through numbers, but let's also loop through an array of data. Okay, so let's do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this array right here. So I'm going to say var coders gets, we got Janae, Seth, Gregory, and Naya. This was season 6. Is that right? Yeah, I think they were there. Yeah, that was no. They were season 7. They were season 7 of the Coding Academy in Jackson. So here we go. So here's my coders. And let's say in here I want to say, hey, this person, they love coding. Okay. So now we have an array. We can loop through it and log a message that reads, whoever the coder is loves coding. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for var I get 0. I is less than coders.length, because again, I'm going to it has to be less than a certain number, and again, the index value of the coder of each coder, we start at 0 and it's going to end at whatever the length of the array is minus 1. So I is less than coders.length, I plus plus, and then I could say here console.log. I could say coders and then square brackets I, and then say loves coding. And when we look in the console, there we see Janae loves coding, Seth loves coding, Gregory loves coding, Nia loves coding. So what's happening here? For var I 0, first we set the variable I to 0. And then I is less than coders.length. The loop asks if I or 0 is less than coders.length. And again, coders.length gets the value of 4 because I have 4 items in the array. And then I'm saying, hey, var message gets coders I loves coding. So we create a variable called message that inserts the item in the coders array with an index value of I. So in the first instance, coders 0 is Janae. So then I concatenate with the string to say Janae loves coding. And then I increment to 1. So then I becomes 1. I say, hey, is 1 less than coders.length? Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Then coders I, or coders 1, which is Seth. Seth loves coding. Increment to 2. Coders 2 is Gregory. Gregory loves coding. Increment to 3, which is Naya. Coders 3, Naya loves coding. Then increment to 4. 4 is less than coders.length. So I don't do anything. I stop right there. A for loop doesn't need an array to be its data set. For example, we can count to 10 like we just did. Also, we can iterate through the data set however we choose. Whoop, go back. Sorry. So we can decrement even. So let's try that out. Let's name coders array right here. But instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with Naya, and I'm going to work my way down. So in other words, it's going to say Naya. I'll just console their name. So we'll say var. Here in my for loop, we're going to say for var. I'm not going to say I get 0 because I got to work this backwards. So I'm going to say var I is going to get, I'm going to say coders.length -1. So it'll start there. And then as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, then I minus minus. So we'll decrement. And then we'll console.log coders I. So what this should do is it should start with Naya, console Naya, and work its way down to Janae and end after there. And yes, it does. Naya, Gregory, Seth, and Janae. How was I able to do that again? So what I had to do was, again, my initialization doesn't start at 0 because I don't want to start at 0. I'm initializing this loop with the very last item in the array. And the very last item in the array, I may not know. I mean, it could be, 128 coders, right? It could be that. But what matters is I'm going to say coders.length, whatever the length of the array is, -1. And that way I know I'm going to get the last item in the array. So again, this is just using those puzzle pieces that we have. Okay, so I'll just pick up that puzzle piece, that little Lego block right there that seems so insignificant, but it actually works right here. So coders.length -1, that's going to be the last item in the array. My condition, as long as I is greater than or equal to 0, okay, because I don't want a -1. So if I is greater than or equal to 0, then that condition is true, then it will execute. And then I minus minus, okay? So this here again is going to decrement, is going to count down by 1, and it'll execute that block of code. We can also do this with our iteration. We don't have to just go by 1 with the iteration. We can skip, folks. Let's do this. Let's say var season, I think you all are season 9. Oof, yes. Okay, please forgive me. Look, there's so many names right now, and I'm going to forget somebody's name. Okay, count it. It's up here. It's not my heart. I'm just listing these names here. So please, again, forgive me if I do not, if I don't have your name here. So many of you all, I don't know what to do. And then a lot of you are like, always quiet, so can be easy to forget. Uh-huh. But if you just want your name on here, then you do need to say something to me. Uh, let's see. I have a Seth here. And there's a Robert, Brennan. I know I'm missing some folks. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I know I missed some folks. There we go. All right, cool. Again, I'm gonna stop here. Okay, so, oh, see there. I guess- All right. Okay, so here we go. So y'all are really in for a treat now. You mad about that? You really about to be mad at me now. So what I have is season 9 coders, and again, this isn't everybody. Please forgive me. Um, but what I'm gonna do is check this out. I'm gonna say for var I gets 0, I is less than season 9 dot length. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I plus plus. And then I'm going to say right here, console.log coach says that coders I is doing a great job today. Oh, wait, that's not supposed to be plus plus. That's supposed to be I plus is that right? Yeah. I plus 2. Oh, no, 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 it's not. I broke it. Ooh. Oh, I did an infinite loop. Great. Live coding. Let me stop this. So yeah, I just did an infinite loop. Which is pretty cool. Not exactly, but and we're gonna look at that. Here we go. And oh, I did the wrong one. Not coders. Forget them. They're at my face now. Season 9. Yeah. There we go. There we go. That's better. So here I'm saying for var I get 0, I is less than season 9 dot length. And then instead of saying I plus plus, I said I gets I plus 2. So I'm using augmented addition here. Console.log. Coach says that season 9 I, whoever that is doing a great job. So we start off with 0. Greg has has an index value of 0. It is less than season 9 dot length. So it says coach says that Greg is doing a great job today. Cool. And then what I do is here my iteration is not incrementing. What I'm doing is I'm skipping over 1. So I'm saying I gets I plus 2. So I go from 0 to 2. So I skip over 1, sorry, Destiny, and then I go today. Yeah. And I say, coach says that Day is doing a great job today. Here he is. He's next. Okay. And then again, day is 2. So now I'm saying I is 2 plus 2, which is 4. I skip over Ashley and I go to Kelly. And I say, hey, Kelly, coach says that Kelly is doing a great job today. I skip over Dana and I go to Tigist. Coach says that Tigist is doing a great job today. I skip over Robin and I go to William. So you see what's happening here. So with our iteration, we don't have to increment. Okay, we don't have to just go forwards by 1 or backwards by 1. We can skip over values if we want to. And I just wanted to show you that. Yeah, this is well, I'm gonna leave it there, but you can see how this works. Okay, so the thing is, we're looping through a data set, and with the for loop, we can loop through it however we want to loop through it. Okay, as we can see right here, we can increment by 2 or any number, whatever it is we choose. All right, enough of that. Let's get into while loop. So the while loop completes a task until a condition is false. So the logic here is a little bit different, but let's look at that. A while loop. Let me see. While loop. The syntax for while loop is this. We say while some condition do stuff. And that's it. That is the syntax for it. Now, it's a little more complex than this, okay, but this is the syntax for a while loop. Let me clear out the console. Okay, and let's examine this. All right, and there you can see again, while some condition, then do stuff. So we're going to count to 10 again, all right, using a while loop. So I'm going to say var I gets 0 or 1, and I'm going to say while I is less than or equal to 10, we're going to log out I, but then I'm also going to say I plus plus. And come over here. Oh, yeah, I already broke it. I knew it. Close that up. I already knew I was going to break it. Go live. There we go. There's 1 through 10. What happens if the number is 3? Meaning back up here with the for loop, Destiny, referring right here. Oh, then it would skip over 2, so start at 0, and then it will add, so 0 plus 3, so this is 0, and then 1, 2, 3, and so it would console, coach says that Ashley's having a good day, is doing a great job today. Then 1, 2, 3, so that's what it would do. Yes. All right, so let's come back over here to this while loop, and this is tricky. Okay, here I'm saying while I is less than or equal to 10, console.log I plus plus, and you can see here that it does count from 1 to 10. All right. So let's look at that. Let's see what's happening. The first thing we need to do, and this is very important, okay, we have to initialize the variable I outside the loop. Notice it's in bold. It's in bold for a reason. Can you use that with a negative number? Can you use what with a negative number, Keisha? What do you mean? Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can use it with it'll just count backwards, but you had to set your um you have to make sure that your initialization and condition match up correctly. Okay. Like we did here. I had to make sure I wrote those correctly because you can see that I'm decrementing right here. So I'm going backwards. Um, but if you're not careful, you can make a mistake like I made where I created an infinite loop because where I just had I plus two and that didn't do anything. I didn't reset the value of I just said I plus two. And so when I just said I plus two, it didn't change I, it just said I plus two. So it would just continue to run with the same, just continue to run one or what have you. But let's go back to this. So here again, we set I to 0 outside of the loop. And then I say while I is less than or equal to 10, then JavaScript is evaluating statement. One is less than or equal to 10. That's true. So then I console.log I gets printed out to the console, and then I plus plus. So I is incremented 2, still less than 10, less than or equal to 10. So the loop continues to run, and it'll run until we get to 11, and then it will stop working. So let's look at this real quick. And what I'm going to do for this is I am going to come over here to my settings, and for the time being, I'm going to turn my auto save off, and I'm going to save my stuff manually now. Okay. Um, so this is again how a while loop works, and it looks pretty simple. While so I set I to 1 out here outside of the loop. I said while I is less than or equal to 10, console.log I plus plus. So it's executing this block of code in here. Tell me, if you will, what is going to happen right here? What is wrong with this? Anybody? Yeah, I know, Dave. Think about it. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. I'm going to set this back out here. And right here, I'm going to say I gets 1. And what's happening here? Yes, it is initializing. I initialize I inside the loop, and what does that mean? What does that do? Anybody? It does. And so let me help you out. Okay, so let's think through this. Okay, here I'm saying var I gets 1. Okay, that's outside the loop. Cool. And I say, well, I is less than or equal to 10, then I gets 1. I'm going to console.log I, which is what? 1. And then I'm going to increment. Now I becomes what? I becomes 2. So here, I is 2. 2 is less than or equal to 10, correct? This is where it's not a trick question. Is 2 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. Okay. So what is the very first thing that I do? Again, this is not a trick question. What am I doing to 2? Or what am I doing to I? I'm resetting it back to 1. And see, I left John's name. I need to add John in there in the array and say he's doing a great job today. Yeah, we're resetting I back to 1. And then we reset I back to 1. I'm going to console.log I, which is 1. And then I'm going to increment I, set it to 2. Then I come over here. Is 2 less than or equal to 10? Yes, it is. What's the very first thing I do? I set I back to 1, log out 1, set I to 2. What have I done here? Exactly, Robin. We have created an infinite loop, and I can tell you, as I just did earlier, I've time and time again, I've created an infinite loop, and that's why I have turned off my autosave right here. Because if I run this, it's going to continue to just console 1 constantly. And again, you create an infinite loop. At some point, when you do that, and you are going to create an infinite loop, if you do anything with a while loop, especially, but even with a for loop, you will create an infinite loop where it's just going to continue to execute that code. Because 2, as long as we're going to be here on this planet, and even afterwards, 2 is always going to be less than or equal to 10. So it's just going to continue to run because that statement is always true. And so what ends up happening will just continue to console 1 constantly all the way down your console. And at some point, what ends up happening is, I see all your questions. I'm going to get to them. What ends up happening is the console just gets tired. Well, the console doesn't get tired. Your brain gets tired because it's constantly trying to console out 1 each and every single time. And as fast as a computer is, it cannot move as fast as that logic being true. So at some point, you'll hear the fan start to go after a couple of seconds on your computer, and then you'll get a message at some point uh in the console saying something like, hey, it's an infinite loop, like it can't keep up. Even computers get tired. you know so our brains need rest. Computers need rest. So if the computer can get tired of doing things and thinking about something constantly, then guess what, you can too. So take a rest sometimes. Take a break. But yes, if it's not infinite, Kelly, check this, because this right here is in fact an infinite loop, and that's why I haven't even saved it, because if once I save it, it's gonna run. And yeah, it's going to break. So yes, that's what happens, and that is why we initialize outside of the loop. Okay. Destiny asks, can we break an infinite loop? Yes, we can break an infinite loop. And the way we break it, I'm going to remove that right there and then save this. Start this back up. Okay. The way that we break it is right here with this increment right here. That increment is what breaks it, because we have to, inside the loop, inside of a while loop, you have to create a condition or you have to create something that will set that condition to false at some point. That is what will break the loop. Okay. But as long if you have something that says, hey, this condition is false at this point, then the loop will break. All right. But if you don't have that, then you will inadvertently create an infinite loop. And again, if you do, it's going to be okay. That's funny. I don't know the answer to that. If I did, trust me, I would use that. I would definitely send reply messages to scammers, just break their phones, just constantly, just getting bing, just getting notifications. Oh yeah. Um. So, while loops are extremely useful when it comes to like gaming. Okay. You can think about like Mario. Okay. And the gameplay is like, hey, while is asking, hey, is Mario alive? Or is the gameplay set to true? Okay. Or we set the gameplay to true. And while the gameplay is true, I can press these buttons and move the arrows, and Mario will run and jump around and do all the things and pounce on the enemies and stuff like that. But inside of that loop, okay, I have to say, okay, well, has Mario gotten hit by Bullet Bill? Okay, that's false. He hasn't got hit. Has Mario, is he next to a Goomba? No. Is Mario underneath a what are those Koopa Troopa? No, he's not. But once he is, then that sets that condition to true. Okay, is Mario next to Bullet Bill? Yes, that's true. Okay, if that's true, then what? Then we set the gameplay to false. And so then that will disable the game and Mario dies. Okay. So that's where while loops are very useful when it comes to gameplay. And so here's the example right here that we just looked at. Where we set, in the previous example, we set the variable I outside the loop. But here, if we assigned I to 1 inside the loop, again, we looked at it and we see that causes an infinite loop, because 1 will get incremented to 2, then we'll come up here and say, hey, is 2 less than or equal to 10? Okay, that's true. So then we set I back to 1, and so it will never get out of that loop. All right. Whew. And the last one that we're going to look at is the forEach loop. Okay. And the forEach loop iterates through an array and completes a task for each item in the array. All right. So let's come back over here. And let me do a clear. And let's look at the forEach loop. And the forEach loop, the syntax is this. We take the array and say dot forEach, if I can spell each correctly. And we'll take each item in the array, and then we will do stuff. And that is the syntax. And I know this may look a little weird for everybody. That's okay. Also, we can write it like this. That's a really shorthand. You say for each item, we do this. We do it in put it in curly brace, and then we do stuff. All right. So this is the syntax for a forEach loop. And again, a forEach loop will iterate through an array and complete a task for each item in the array. Okay. So, and it only works on arrays. Be very clear. Let me make a only works on arrays, because for each is an array method. Okay. And that's why it only works on array. When I say inside the loop, am I referring to items inside the curly brace? That's the loop, whatever's going on in there. So with array, with for each, okay, I can say now I want to say every coder that's in the array is doing a good job. And now let me add John to this. There we go. All right. So what I can do is I'm going to say season 9, and I'm going to say dot for each. And for each, you can name this whatever you want. I'm going to say for each codeling, and we're going to console.log Coach Satch says that codeling is doing a great job today. And I come over here to my console, and there you can see it. This time it said everybody is doing a great job today. Okay. And that is, I'm able to do that because for each loop, yes, Destiny, even you. The for each loop doesn't have to iterate. It's like it's just going to do something for each item in the array. Okay. So this is what we call more declarative. Yes, this is more declarative. Okay. Let me see if I mentioned that in here. We can refactor the previous example with the coders array, just like we just did. I said season 9 dot for each codeling, and then I console the message. And yes, we can write this even shorter, okay, because I'm only doing one task here, okay. I can write all this on one line by saying season 9 dot for each, and instead of coding, I'll just make that a C right there, and then return console.log Coach Satch says that space C is doing a great job. And there you can see that it console that message out, and I wrote all that on one line. Excuse me. All that was written on one line, and that's the really cool thing about it. Now, let's talk about this real quick while it's on my mind. This symbol right here, we call this the fat arrow, and what it simply means is return. So if you ever hear me say, fat arrow, this is what I'm referring to, and is the equal sign with the chevron facing it. Okay. And so they do have to be touching. Okay. And that's how we create what's again called a fat arrow. And it simply means return. All right. So I can say season 9 dot for each C, or for each codeling, then return this right here, complete this task. Okay. Also, I want to mention here, when I type in codeling right here, this is like me creating a variable. So this is like me saying var codeling. So I'm initializing a variable right here. And so then it will understand In other words, hey, for every item in the array, I'm just calling every item in the array calling or calling it C here. Okay, so yeah, what this does, again, I mentioned this is more declarative, okay? And with coding, we have these two concepts, imperative coding versus declarative coding. I did not know alligator was called a chevron. Yes, it's called a chevron. I haven't heard of it being called an empty function, Robin. I know there's an anonymous function, but that's something a little different, and we'll get to that. So there's imperative versus declarative coding or programming. Okay. Imperative programming is also you also hear it called this right here, or being referred to as brute force. Okay. And what that is we are explicitly saying how we want this program to work. So we're not only writing a command, but we're saying exactly how this command needs to be done. All right. And that is different from declarative, where declarative programming says, hey, just do it. I don't want to have to write out the logic for how this needs to be done. I just want this to be done. Okay. The example that is that what hackers use? I don't know. I don't know how they break passwords, Destiny, to be honest with you. And if I knew that, I'd probably do something about that. But maybe they do. Maybe it is what they do. They probably need to because they want to say how they want to break it. So yes. But yeah, imperative programming is like the Cupid Shuffle, right? Because in the Cupid Shuffle, they tell you the steps, to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. Now kick, now kick, now kick, now kick, now walk it by. So they're telling you the steps. All right, that's imperative. That's brute force. How you do the Cupid Shuffle? They tell you how to do it. That is different from back that thing up. Girl, you looks good. Won't you back that thing up? I'm not telling you how, right? I'm just saying back that thing up, okay? And so that's completely different. So imperative programming, brute force, all right? I'm explaining the steps. This is how I want you to do it. Declarative programming, back that thing up, right? And that's it. And don't matter how you do it, you hear that boom, 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 and you know what to do. And I don't have to explain how to do it. So that's the difference between the two. Why is this important? Again, because a lot of times when you're writing something, a program, you don't want to, you don't need to say explicitly how to do it. Okay, you just wanted to complete a task. And in most cases, you want to live in the land of declarative programming. Okay, so this is one way of how we can write something declaratively using the for each loop, because we could have easily done the same thing right here, and we did way up here. So we could have easily written out this code saying, hey, for loop. So take each item in the array. Hey, look and see, is this value less than 0? Oh, it is. Okay. Well, then do this thing and then increment and then check and see, okay, is this less than whatever the length of the array is? Oh, it's true. Okay. Well, then do this. Increment. We could do that, right? And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what you feel more comfortable with, do it. With a for each loop, If it's an array, hey, just do this thing, do this for everything in the array, and it'll do it. And you can see, obviously, I mean, it shortens the code up as well. So I'm not writing massive amount of lines and have a lot of logic. Sometimes, it may take more logic, in which case we use curly braces like so. But if it doesn't, then if you can do it all in one line, do it all in one line. Okay. Whew. So there are some other loops out there like for in and for of. Um, you want to know how they work, and there are more loops in this right here as well. So you want to know how each one of them works, and knowing when to apply one over the other, okay, and why you apply one over the other. Sometimes I would try to do things using a for each loop, but it did require me to just pull out, a traditional for loop and work it that way. Um, and if that's what I had to do, it's what I had to do. Also, you'll want to look at a for in loop, because this is particularly different, because this works for items that are not iterable, uh, like an object. And so that we'll look at that later. Okay, but that's enough of this video. I have gone over an hour on repetition structures with some other little juicy pieces that are important to know as well. So I'm going to end this video here, and I will see you on the other side of it.